hello. This is really just a test. If anyone's here, first they'd be very surprised, and secondly, I can't see anything anyone is saying right now. Here we go. Right. So yes, welcome. I am just changing a couple of settings, but I think I can now at least see what's going on. So if you are here, welcome. I didn't actually have a plan here. I was just testing whether I could do live streaming, and I thought I would just say question and answers. Hope you're having a good summer. Someone is actually here. That's amazing. Split Jogball. Hello, welcome. There's a bit of a delay, I think, between you typing and me seeing it, so maybe we'll gather a crowd in a minute. I'm curious, have you seen my channel before? Have you just like found this from a random click? I don't know. I'm not really, as you can tell, probably very polished with my setup here. Hopefully you can hear me. I don't think I've set up I can probably type back to you as well, but I'm just going to chat, I think. Enjoy a cup of tea. See if anyone turns up. Maybe having a good summer. If you don't know me, I tend to make videos about maths, mostly maths challenges and Olympiads. It's kind of strange actually. I'm watching the chat here and I'm seeing myself like 20 seconds ago. I see. Okay, you check when the people who you're subscribed to are live and then join it. Okay, great. Well, I'm pleased you made it. Someone's here. I wasn't really expecting anyone to turn up. 30,000 subscribers on YouTube, and this is the first time I've even tried to start a live stream. And you might have seen 3 minutes ago I tried and failed, and the camera didn't even work. So that wasn't so good. But I'm thinking through the year I might do this a bit more. I quite like the idea of connecting live and answering people's questions. And I used to do lots of Twitter, and it's kind of got to the point where I don't have the time to do so much of that anymore. So I want to find a way of staying connected with students and just offering whatever help I can. So maybe this would be a good way of doing it. I've got 3 people here. This is actually quite exciting. Didn't expect to get anywhere near these enormous numbers on when I just clicked test the live stream. Should have had something to talk about, really, I suppose. Should have planned it. There we go. That's a good lesson. What can we talk about? Maths challenges. Senior maths challenge coming up in a month or so for ages 16 to 18. Always an interesting one. I guess most people, I don't know, it's interesting. I've got quite a lot of subscribers who have been subscribers for a long time. I think I'm actually going to try to revive my YouTube channel a little bit over the next few months. I'm doing quite a lot of work on it. When I look at the demographics on the channel, it seems like a lot of people are now in the kind of age 18 to 30 group, which is kind of interesting. Whereas, my content really is targeted at school-aged students, maybe some stuff at parents and teachers as well. But I have a theory that a lot of my subscribers were here a long time ago and maybe have just hung around. I'm very happy to have everyone here. Moving up to secondary. Okay, right. So you are very much here for the sort of content that I make. Then probably more interested in the junior maths challenge. So yeah, that's for year 7 and 8, like ages 11 to 13, and then intermediate for ages 13 to 16. Actually, I'm going to be making a lot more content for year 7 and 8 maths. I've got this. I ran these live classes last year, and it's all like some really interesting topics in math that go a bit beyond what is in the school syllabus, and some of that will end up on YouTube and some of it on my courses.mathsaurus.com website. But that has been quite a bit of my focus over the last couple of years. I think it's an interesting stage at school because you start to do some really interesting maths, right? You go to secondary school and you start to do algebra, you start to maths is fun in primary school as well, where you do a lot of fractions and number work and things like that. And then you get to secondary school and you start to be able to get a bit more depth. Like algebra, I would say, is the language that maths is written in. And so once you really understand that language, you can start doing some really interesting stuff. You got into the kangaroo last year and it was on your birthday. Oh wow, okay, fine. So you're doing very well then. Or maybe you're older than I think. Getting into the kangaroo is an excellent achievement, whatever age you're in. It sounds like you might have been doing it slightly early. Kangaroo problems are some of my favourite actually, because they are just a bit harder than the challenge questions, but they are still multiple choice and still quite discrete problems. You can pick them up and put them down, and they're quite fun sorts of things to look at. So tons of practice. Well, not as many practice papers for the kangaroos available. The kangaroos are a bit newer, although there are versions of these around the world as well. So there are lots of past papers. I've been writing a lot of my own kangaroo questions over the summer as well. So I'm going to be running some live classes for the Junior Maths Challenge and just for Junior Challenge and Enrichment, and a lot of those will be used in those classes, and then eventually onto the online courses. But they're good fun at that level, I think. You know enough maths that the questions start to become interesting, but they don't have so much background that you need that they're still quite easy to get into most of the time, even though they might be quite hard to solve. Maths is interesting at every level. I think, you did GCSE maths in years 9, 10 and 11, and perhaps some of that is a bit more routine, but it's all very, very important and useful. Someone's asked a question. Okay. Sorry, I'm going to have to lean in awkwardly to read it because of the way I've set my screen up here. Do you think attempting EKMT past papers are beneficial for year 11 in terms of revising for normal GCSE maths, or should we stick to the exam questions? I think, it's a good question actually. I might come back and make some videos about some of these. It is beneficial in the sense that doing maths is always going to help you, and especially doing more problem solving maths, it's going to help you with those harder grade 9 questions, I think, where you are required to think on your feet a little bit more. But I don't think they're not really directly helpful for GCSE maths. The topics are sort of Senior Maths Challenge will have some GCSE maths in it. That's not a bad thing to look at. You need to... Your time is best spent probably if you really just want to have GCSE maths, just doing GCSE papers. But if you're doing A-level in the future, and if you want to do maths challenges as well, it will certainly help you with maths. I suppose, how would I describe this? Maybe imagine you want to be a tennis player, right? Probably the best thing that you can do is to play tennis most of the time, but you might also go to the gym to get stronger. And I think it's probably a similar situation there, right? That you're not going to immediately be able to hit a tennis shot by going to the gym, but you will strengthen yourself for later tennis shots by having been at the gym. And I think the maths challenge questions are very much like that. They train your brain, train your logical skill. And so yes, very useful. Not what I would do in the last week before the exam, but in the last 6 months before the exam, I would definitely still be doing maths challenge questions as well, if that makes sense. I struggle with maths, with overthinking. Adam Jackson, hello Adam. I struggle with overthinking in maths Olympia problems. Do you have any tips? BMO1 age. Yeah, actually I've been looking at some BMO problems recently. I haven't traditionally offered classes or courses at that level, but they're very interesting problems. Overthinking, certainly something I emphasize with you here as well. I think overthinking, I would always describe myself as an overthinker, and I think no problem. Okay. There are things that are unhelpful in life that are sometimes helpful in maths. Maybe overthinking is one of them. I feel like a lot of mathematicians are overthinkers because, if you do ruminate on problems and think very deeply about them, you end up seeing things that other people haven't. A lot of people will sort of skip over interesting bits of problems. They think they've solved them, and actually you need to continue to question yourself a little bit in maths. You have to say, okay, is my argument really watertight? Does my proof really work? So, overthinking though can often come with kind of procrastination, and I think what you might mean a little bit is that you spend a lot of time thinking about different ways of approaching the problem rather than getting on and solving them, and you do have to just like try things out, and you've got to develop that ability to just try out a method, get to a certain point and say, actually that wasn't the right method. I do math problems all the time, even with tons of experience with these things, and the first method you try doesn't necessarily work out. So I think you have to just kind of get used to that, and that's part of the process. It is a hard thing to do. So struggle for confidence, panic and overthink, but sometimes I found that my gut feeling was correct. Yeah, intuition's hard to build, right? I mean, there's a reason that experience is very, very helpful, and it's exactly because of this. And I think one thing perhaps I wish I'd known when I was a bit younger is that yes, it's good to be smart and you can just learn stuff, and actually up to a point you can get very far by just being good at maths and just throwing yourself at the problem. But when you look at these much bigger problems, I did a PhD recently that required writing a whole book about maths basically. When you get to that sort of level of things, and the BMO starts to be a bit like this because you've got more involved problems, you've got to really spend some time seeing through an argument. That intuition and that experience as to what sort of things work is really does really start to become important. And so, yeah, I would absolutely say, I think, it's good to think about these things. And I think, you, even by asking these questions, you're a step ahead of some people, because I think people don't always realize that this is the problem they've got. People always look at it and they say, my problem is a technical problem, right? I need to know more algebra. I need to know more geometry or something. And actually what they need to do is to just learn to think more, and to think to understand their emotions in these problems, to understand how they that anxiety you feel that you might be wasting time, or you might look stupid by going down the wrong route or something. It's crazy, isn't it, that we feel like that, even though we're the only people looking at that sheet of paper. Okay, it'll be marked later, but I still get this. I still think, oh, hang on, if I write this down and that was just a stupid thing to do, then I'm going to kind of kick myself later. But actually it's the only way to get better, right? And you have to go down those routes. You have to get those things wrong, and then later you start getting them wrong less, but actually you also start like enjoying those mistakes more. It's a benefit as working as a teacher as well, I suppose, because you start to see lots of other people's mistakes, and you just sort of see how inevitable that is. And even the most exceptional students that I've worked with, will be making a lot of mistakes. In fact, the best students are probably making more mistakes. It's sort of how you can spot a professor in a live lecture. Actually, that actually they have been at a university for the last few years, and it tends to be the professors, I think, that ask the sort of most stupid questions, if you like. And they're not afraid, because they've got that confidence that they know they're good at maths, right? They don't. The ego part of it is still there, but it's not. It's different, right? They just there because they're interested. They want to know the answer, and if there's something they haven't followed, they'll just ask that. And okay, if it's it's not like questioning their sort of ability. But I think when you're younger and you're sort of proving yourself in maths, it's you feel like you want to sort of be seen to be good all the time. I think Spit Jogball says I'm known as a calculator in my school, and again, that is obviously it's a sign that you're good at maths, and that pride that you get from it can be a good thing, but it can be a dangerous thing as well, right? Because when you get seen as someone who's good, you start to become fearful of making mistakes, right? I certainly feel I had this as well. I was always been good at maths, and and there's a point somehow, I think perhaps when I went to university, where I was like, I'm good at maths, and I've got to stay good at maths, and I've got to kind of show that. But the only way to get better at it is to be a bit more weak sometimes, right? And to keep making these mistakes and say, actually, yeah, I am good at this, but I need to kind of take a step back. I need to do something again. I need to get some things wrong. So be very, very cautious of getting that reputation. I mean, not getting the reputation, but if the pride you're getting from it is about your the praise from other people, or not wanting to make mistakes, you can be in what I suppose what I'm saying is, yes, be good at maths, yes, be fast and do calculations well. Also try to find that humility of, and that awareness that those mistakes are really valuable, and that's a part of what's going to make you continue to be really good at maths. I think especially primary school maths, it's all about getting 10 out of 10, right? Every test, you want to get 10 out of 10. I always, even from the very best, I've taught some of the best students in the country maths, and I would set tests and I would deliberately make them so even those students could only get 6 or 7 out of 10, because I wanted them to know that, it was a bad test if it was 10 out of 10, if they could always get 10 out of 10, because I wasn't challenging them enough. So, again, I'm rambling a little bit, but maybe this makes some sense. There's lots of comments here. I'm very pleased that I just turned on this live with no intention of actually talking here. I was just trying to see if it worked, but really happy to chat to some of you for half an hour this evening. So BMO 1 or SMC, which should I focus on to do well in Tamur? I'm going to be honest with you, probably neither. I would focus on Tamur and Matt. There's just plenty of questions for both of those, and like they have problem solving built into them. It's not like you need to, like, they're already hard questions that have these difficult problem solving stuff in them, so like it's not like you need to build in additional problem solving to do well in those, if that makes sense. So yes, I mean, not saying that, you know, the BMO and the SMC still helpful. I'd probably for Tamura and Matt lean towards the senior maths challenge rather than the BMO. It's more like, you know, they Tamura and Matt don't use a lot of advanced methods. It's more like they are still smaller sort of problems. It's going to be interesting this year because if the online format and stuff for Matt and Tamura does change things a bit. But yeah, my advice is keep doing those until you run out of papers, and then maybe a bit of SMC. I've heard that flashcards are relatively useless in maths. However, with putting exam questions on them and reviewing them, mapping out processes in one head as opposed to solving the question on paper, repeating intervals be worth trying out. Yeah, I mean, like, I think people revise in all sorts of ways. For maths, you know, the traditional highlighting notes and making lots of notes and writing it out over and over again isn't always the most helpful. I think when you get to more advanced maths, it can be like undergraduate maths, like university maths. I mean, you have to learn a lot of like bookwork, and you have to like know theorems, and you have to be able to write stuff out. And there's a bit of, you know, I think things like the quadratic equation, right? Actually, it might be in your formula sheet, the quadratic equation, you know, minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Things like that, it's actually worth memorising, right? Your teachers will probably say you don't really need to. Yeah, you can look it up, that's fine. And if you forget it, you can still look it on the formula sheet. But I use that, you know, not every day, but all the time. And you know, it just saves you a lot of time, right? So those sorts of things, yeah, you could have flashcards, you could stick them to your wall, and you could look at them every day until you've memorised them. Memorisation is a part of what you need to do in maths. Mostly, though, maths is about problem solving, being able to approach different problems, being able to solve them well. So, you know, I think you should be spending, let me say, at least 80% of your time solving past paper problems or solving new problems and thinking about them, and only 20% of your time reviewing your notes and doing the flashcards and all that sort of stuff, right? So I don't want to say it's unhelpful. I think it can be helpful in places. I've definitely used those sorts of methods to memorise things for exams, but it won't be the thing that really transforms how you do, and it won't be the thing that pushes you to those sort of heights of really achieving very well. Okay, for Cambridge Computer Science interview, which types of maths should I focus on? I'm going to say I don't really know what they ask in computer science interviews. For the maths component of it, again, yeah, I mean, there is, I think the sort of thing I would look at for that is the STEP. If you STEP, I think there's if you go to the STEP website, there's this booklet called like Advanced Problem Solving. It's by Stephen Silkos. It's quite a famous book. You can buy it as a book, but it's also just available for free as a PDF. And it's got lots of like introduction to STEP style problems, and there's lots of like hints and things in there. So I think, again, interviews for every subject are not going to expect you to know a lot. It's more about like how you apply yourself to new situations. So they are a bit more in-depth problems, but they're not going to be as in-depth as a BMO problem on the whole. They're going to be, you know, actually in some ways, this might be controversial, but like the intermediate Olympiads are might be better than BMO for an interview question. I think the question's probably more pitched at the level of the junior and intermediate Olympiad, right? Stuff you don't need as much maths for, but will test you in hard ways. And the other one, actually, for computer science, I reckon a good shout would be to look at something called the Australian Informatics Competition. That's like a kind of hard maths challenge, but it's all about like it's more like discrete maths and logic, and like how many roots are there through diagrams and things like that. I made a few questions like that in this new course I have on Spotify, actually. Don't buy it, it's going to be made free very soon. But it's if you go to Spotify and you go to the personal development tab, if you're in the UK, you can see some of my problems about that there. Sorry, random plug. I'm not really here for anything other than just to say hello. How are you? Yeah, not bad, Ishan. How are you doing? Hope it's a nice sunny day here in the UK, enjoying the summer, getting ready for some new classes starting in a couple of weeks' time. Doing a bit of video recording and things like that. Do you know about edXL further maths modules? I'm struggling picking between further P2 Interesting. I was literally just looking at these before this call, and I haven't taught further maths in a school for a while. I've had some like private students who've done it, and I'm actually a bit out of date with those. Last time I taught it in a school, it was in the old system. But what I would say between Further Pure 2 and Decision 1, I did literally just look at one of the Further Pure 2 papers, and there was some really hard stuff in there, to be honest, and things that didn't used to be in Further Maths. I was kind of surprised what was in there. So I'm actually going to be updating my knowledge by going through some of that soon. Maybe that's something we can do on a live at some point. That could be quite fun. Decision 1 though, I don't know exactly. So again, I don't know exactly the rules of like which ones you're allowed to choose, but Decision 1 is going to be a lot easier. Let's face it. I mean, it's more algorithmic thinking. It's like some of it's a bit tedious. I know that module a bit better. It's like lots of like algorithms for sorting and searching and traveling salesman problems and things like that. So it is easier. I wouldn't say like you still have to work, but this decision is something you can really like just. If you're a committed student and you don't mind working through a bit of a slog, you will have no problem with it. Further Pure 2, you can be a committed student and you can still find it really hard. Having said that, if you love maths, probably Further Pure 2 is also more interesting, right? Because it's going to have like really hard maths in it. Ishan, should I do Further Maths GCSE? Yeah. I mean, okay, I don't know you, right? I mean, if you're terrible at maths, probably not. I imagine because you're asking that question that it's been suggested that it's a reasonable possibility for you to do Further Maths GCSE, in which case, absolutely. If you think you might want to do A-level maths, taking something like Further Maths GCSE or the OCR freestanding maths qualification, additional maths. And that's the one I used to teach. Really excellent. They will start to prepare you for A-level, and they're actually really satisfying qualifications. I think GCSE can get a bit tedious in places. Like some of the topics I think are not always the best. It's mandated by the government what goes into GCSE rather than also by mathematicians, but. So yeah, I love those. I used to love teaching those, and also if you're in a class that's doing further maths, you kind of around like the other people that like maths, and I wouldn't underestimate that, right? It's a really powerful thing, just having friends who also like maths and that you can talk to it about, and that will make you a lot better. I've been maintaining grade 9, but I don't know if it'll take up a lot of time. Yeah, probably will take a bit of time to be honest. But most things that are worth doing are a bit of hard work as well, and if you enjoy maths and it's something you want to continue with, I would very much recommend it. Even if you don't want to do maths, it's something that people still like view as a valuable qualification. So I've had students in the past who went on to do languages and they still wanted to do Further Maths GCSE because it kind of proves your intelligence a little bit, and it was just fun and it meant they were around their friends and the other smart students that they wanted to work with. So it's not essential, but you can still do A-level without it. But yeah, if you're at somewhere near a grade 9 standard, I think you'll enjoy it. What maths preparation should I do if I want to take physics for a degree, Annie? Good question. In some ways, physics degrees have more maths in them than maths degrees do. Let me explain what I mean by that. Maths degrees, they do obviously have maths, but like degree level maths is quite different from A-level maths. You find courses like physics and engineering actually have more of the sort of A-level style maths in the degree. So actually doing more maths can really help you with those. And you need to look at different some universities for physics will say they really want you to do further maths, some will just want you to do single maths perhaps, but either way, I mean, further maths is really going to be helpful for a physics degree. Whether or not it's essential at the university you're applying for, I don't know. I'm a maths specialist, so I haven't really looked at entrance requirements for physics degrees for a while. Otherwise also I think looking at those maths entrance papers and maths challenge questions, I think are always good. They just improve your problem solving, and obviously if you're doing physics A-level, it overlaps a lot with the mechanics. I'm not as it's funny, I didn't used to love the mechanics as much. I did a PhD recently, as you might know if you follow me at all. I worked as a maths teacher for 7 years, and then came here to do a PhD, and actually ended up having quite a lot of physics in it, sort of unexpectedly almost. I proved that some things that happen in financial markets behave like what you call a quantum harmonic oscillator. And it's an interesting mix actually, the physics, modern physics, the particle physics of like probability and mechanics. So people think of it as just mechanics, but actually randomness is a big part of it as well, I think. But take this with a pinch of salt. Follow my friend Lewis. He's Lego physics guy. He's got a great physics website, and he could probably give you some advice on that as well. Do you know him? Have you seen his channel? He might have done. I think he's got a lot more subscribers than I have. He's got like 100 thousand. But thank you, no problem. Nice to see you here. Is it risky applying for further maths A level, not having done it at GCSE? Will you be at a disadvantage? Well, look, I mean, I can't on the one hand say that doing it is an advantage and then say that not doing it is a disadvantage, right? I mean, that would be very contradictory. However, if you haven't done it, you still have right now 3 weeks before it starts, or maybe you're doing this next year. Maybe you're talking about doing this next year actually. In which case, so I think if you've still got time to choose to do it, if you are planning to do further maths, strongly advise doing it. Even if you're not actually taking the exam and you don't want to do the whole thing, you could study some parts of it. Actually, if you go to the Mathsaurus website, I've got this course called Get Ready to Start A-Level Maths, and actually I'm in the process over the next 6 months of expanding it into like a GCSE course and an A-Level course, and so I'm going to like pull bits of different topics and make an Add Maths course and that sort of stuff as well. So there's a totally free 3-day trial on that, and so you can have a look at that. Some of the content in there covers that. Doing something like that. I've just picked in that course the topics that I think are most relevant for A-level. So even if you don't want to get the membership, that's fine. You can have a look and you can see what topics I put in there, and then you can go in and study those ones, right? I mean, it's not hard to find material on those things. On my website, there's also a list of some excellent textbooks. Get the Add Maths textbook, and just work through bits of it, even if you don't want to do the whole course, right? I mean, it's actually, these textbooks used to be pretty bad, but here, this is the freestanding maths qualification textbook. I don't know if you can see that. But there's lots of stuff out there that you can do. Do universities look at UKMT maths challenges? I haven't missed anything here. No, I don't think I have. Hi, James. Yeah, I mean, it's something they would look at. Sorry, I'm getting a bit behind in the chat. I'll try to speed up a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it's a good. It's one of these things, like, because not everyone does them. You're not at much of a disadvantage for not doing them. It's just one of many extra things. Like, so universities will want to see that you're doing the sorts of things that students that apply for that subject will be doing, right? So it could be maths challenges. It could be safe cracking competition, if you've heard of that. It could be just reading around. It could be going to lectures and classes. You don't have to do all these things. Doesn't matter if you haven't done all of them, but certainly picking some of them and doing them is good. And I would say big exception as well is like if you've kind of if you've got through to like the Olympiad and you've got a medal in the Olympiad, I think that's a very impressive achievement. If you've got even getting like a gold in the senior maths challenge as well, or intermediate maths challenge, or silver or bronze even, is a good achievement. But there are levels of proving things, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's a good thing to do for sure, for all sorts of reasons, and also just for the joy of it, of course, not just for university. So hopefully you enjoy doing it anyway, and then it's win-win. And that's what I try to get across in my content, that these problems are fun and that we should be doing them for enjoyment as well. In physics, maths and computer science and physics, in math there are some questions which seem like logic puzzles. How to prepare for these? Yeah, good question. I would honestly just do lots of them. And there's so many of them that I think, and perhaps that's a good place where the maths challenge questions come in as well. But these questions that look like they're really different, when you do so many of them, they start to look similar. They start to begin, they begin to look like there are lots of common themes, is what I would say, right? So they're not, there's only so many ways you can ask a logic question in these papers, to be honest. That's not a full answer. There are plenty of books and things. I mean, there's lots of books. I mean, again, I'm building this page of books. There's one I've got here somewhere called, I think it's called the Algorithmic Puzzles. I don't think I can see it immediately. But there are things like that. There's also these, I think I mentioned earlier, these the informatics challenges. Maybe that would be good for logic. Australian ones, perhaps. Yeah. Not a totally full answer there. Sorry about that, but hopefully that's makes some use. Further maths, he doesn't have too much further maths A-level content, I think, or perhaps even normal A-level more, has basic measures. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I think it's not necessarily about preparing you for the content of further maths, it's just about preparing you for the content of A-level, right? But if you're doing A-level maths and further maths, the fact that you've covered quite a lot of A-level maths already means you can just go straight on with the further maths stuff and you can go at it with pace, right? So yeah, it's not that you need it for the further maths content, it's that you'll be ticking off some of the A-level single maths content, and you will just be a bit ahead, right? All these ideas take time to sink in. Things like, A-level, you do a lot of calculus, like differentiation and integration. Having studied a bit of that, the earlier you can do that, the more like routine that can be for you, the more you can move on easily to the harder topics, right? So That's what I meant there. Does the exam board matter for A-level maths? No, not at all. No, most people don't get to choose. You just have to do whatever the school gives you. I mean, teachers have personal preferences as to different exam boards. I've certainly got, I think there are exams that are nicer than others, but you won't be advantaged or disadvantaged by the exam boards that your school chooses. So don't worry about that too much. Just top it up with interesting things like maths challenges and STEP and maths and all that sort of stuff. What would you say is the hardest area of maths? Well, it's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. So I've got getting lots of ideas for YouTube videos to make here. I don't know if I can answer. I think it's very personal. Like, some people, like a lot of people that do A-level maths, like say, statistics is the hardest, right? Because they're just not used to like applying it to the real world and doing like wordy problems and things like that. But clearly, it's not the most deep part of maths. My PhD is in probability theory. Ended up having some differential equations, things like that. And like, everything you do in maths, you can get to a point where it's really, really hard by just doing a more advanced version of it. So I think there's probably some bits of pure maths. I would say like pure maths is going to have the biggest abstraction, right? I mean, I just mentioned like differentiation and integration, and these things build on top of that, right? And then you might then do differential equations, right, which are equations that involve dy by dx, d2y by dx squared, and so on, right? And then there's a whole study of that. But then there's a whole field that kind of looks at that from above and says, okay, can I make theories about classes of differential equations? And there's some really beautiful theory that say, okay, actually all of these things are going to sit in a certain type of abstract mathematical space, and thinking about that is then really hard, right? I mean, you're used to thinking in 1 dimension, 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions, and then suddenly you have this abstract maths where you're thinking in infinitely many dimensions. Not directly, but So I don't know. I really like. There's a lot of people say probability is very hard, but I enjoy that, and so I don't know. I need to think about that one more. Yeah. Thanks for all your comments. What do you think about nature versus nurture in the context of maths? Yeah, I mean, my view is that most students can do well at maths given sufficient. If you start like early enough and you put enough time in it and you have decent teachers and you don't get distracted by other things and you keep kind of focused on it, you'll get good at maths, right? I've never taken a private student like aged 7. I often have students at these sort of age 7 or 8 sometimes, and wherever they start, we can more or less get them to a good standard by the time they're at GCSE A-level maths, getting top grades. Having like that spark for like really exceptional maths, I don't know. I really don't know. I think you can train it. I think you can nurture it. But I think there might be something a little bit innate in there as well. Maybe compare it to, you want to be a basketball player, it helps to be quite tall. Doesn't stop you becoming really good at basketball if you're not, but there may be some limit. That's probably not a very good analogy. I've seen, I can think of a couple. I think of some really inspiring students that I've taught as well who seemed to not be very good at maths, or not. They're not. That's a bit harsh. They were struggling. Let's say when they tried to do A-level further maths, and they just kind of persevered, and they did that, and they went on to do PhDs in mathematical based subjects, and really to master it. So, I think people do take different amounts of time to learn things, and our brains probably do work differently. I mean, I'm saying this all from a position of not of research, of just my sort of experience of having worked with lots of students, I suppose, and most of them pretty strong. So yeah, I think much more nurture than nature for sure. Nature with no nurture is going to get you nowhere, but you can make up for a lot with a well-nurtured student. And that's why teaching is very effective as well. Exactly 1 year before Tamua, what steps should I take to do really well? I've got a couple of practice Tamua papers in a free course you might have seen on the Mathsaurus website. I'm going to be starting to. My friend Ben is going to start to run some questions, some classes for them soon as well. Bean, I think you might have emailed me recently. Anyway, yeah. So, if you're a year away from it, that means you're just starting A-level. So you won't necessarily know all the maths that you need to tackle the problems at this point, but you will quite soon. So I would start looking at the papers as soon as possible, and possibly also throw in some of the old step 1 papers. They don't do step 1 anymore, but they're very good. And more kind of, this stage of the year, you've got the senior maths challenge coming up in a month. That's a really good place to start, because you haven't done it. You probably haven't quite done enough maths to start really doing lots of math papers. Well, you could start a little bit, but you've got a month to do that, and then I reckon by October you've probably done enough of the course that you can start looking at them. I mean, I wouldn't start seriously doing all the papers until April or next summer, perhaps. Probably until April, perhaps, because so I suppose also just making sure you get really good at the A-level maths that you're covering, so that you are then ready to tackle those advanced problem solving questions. Because with the best will in the world, there's no point trying really advanced questions on differentiation until you've really mastered differentiation, right? So yeah, maybe probably if I think about students that have done well in the past, up until Christmas, even maybe senior maths challenge, focus on A-level. From Christmas to April, start to change your track and start to look at those things. Oxford do some good live streams for the math as well that are worth going to. So yeah, and then April onwards you can really start your preparations in a bit more seriousness, perhaps. Help someone stand out on the university application. Honestly, for maths, if you're applying to Oxford and Cambridge, well, Oxford in particular, I suppose, just doing well on that test, the math, I don't want to say they throw away the rest of your application, but maths compared to other subjects doesn't rely as heavily on personal statements and things like that. I know a lot of tutors who say they not really that interested in them. Obviously, you should do a good personal statement. It will look bad if you haven't made a good effort at it, but yeah, doing things like maths challenges and doing some wider reading. I think one of the things that you might think about is that you kind of want to, if you are going for an interview, again, it's not all about Oxbridge, but you kind of want to be interesting at the point when you get to your interview. So this is a great time to do a bit of wider reading. People classically put books on their personal statements, which is a bit of a waste of time in some ways. But actually, having read the books is not a waste of time at all, because it gives you interesting things to talk about and it gives you lots of ideas, right? So you just want to come across as that sort of person that is good at maths, but also that they want to teach, right? I wouldn't soft skills are not strong in maths sometimes amongst mathematicians, but just being someone where you meet someone and you show an enthusiasm and you're good at maths, but you're not sort of overly showy about that, and you're open to making mistakes, and you come across as someone that would be very nice to work with, right? I think that's undervalued when we talk about university admissions. Out of all the exams you've seen, what's the most challenging? The Putnam competition it's like a maths Olympiad, but for university students. I think the average score in it was 0 or something like that. I mean, I said average, the median average I think score was 0 on one of the recent ones. Maybe that's made up, but it wouldn't surprise me. Very, 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 very challenging. And there's this. I've got that one I do look for. Which I must say I haven't read in its entirety yet, but there's this one here. It's how to prepare for the Putnam Challenge and beyond, and it's a coverage of of university level maths, but in a really interesting and advanced way. I've dipped in and out of little bits of it, and if I was, if I had a little bit more, if I had some freedom, I would freedom. Do I mean money? I don't know. What I'm trying to say is I would very much enjoy spending a year sitting down and reading this book, but it probably would take about that long. Hopefully once I finish some of the school content at Mathsaurus, I might be able to move on to some of that, and perhaps some of you guys who have come through the A-level programme might be interested in doing that at university as well. Maybe we should get the Discord going again one day, I don't know. If anyone remembers my Discord, it was a long time ago now. How much time would I need to really do well in SMC if I'm starting just for Olympiads? You mean you just care about qualifying for the Olympiad? Yeah, I mean you can spend a long time preparing for these things. I mean I think it depends on your starting point and how well you're doing at them. Qualifying for the Olympiad, very, very challenging. Remember, you can still enter the Olympiad by just paying the fee afterwards. So even if you really want to do the Olympiad, you can do the senior maths challenge and you can say, okay, I got a gold and I still want to do the Olympiad, and you can just pay and enter. Super jealous of that book collection. Yeah, I know people always ask me about this. Actually, I rearranged my whole office because I used to live somewhere else, and these books were in the background. And I moved a couple of years ago. I bought a flat for the first time, and now I have this new office. It's kind of nice, a bit bigger than the old one. But the angles of my cameras meant that like I was off at it was showing random parts, and I've restored just last week. I've restored the bookshelf to being behind the camera and put all my maths books here. So I do have books that are not about maths. There might even be a few of them you can see, but this is mostly a maths collection over many years. Yeah. Lots of interest, and I've put this books. I've actually just yesterday I put this books page on the Mathsaurus website, so you can see details of many of the books that are on these shelves, and take a look at them if you want to. £40 for BMO1. Yeah, it's a bit. It's not like, I don't know whether you think £40 is cheap or expensive. Depends on your perspective, I suppose. But obviously BMO requires some very qualified mathematicians to sit down and mark them, and so it is quite expensive. Well, I mean, it's marked by volunteers actually, but so I suppose it doesn't really cost them that much. But I don't know if they would call it a deterrent. Anyway, they don't want the numbers of people taking BMO to be enormous, right? But they do want anyone who's interested to be able to take it. So I guess putting a fee like that on, I think, restricts it to people who are have some chance of doing well. After all, if you're not going to do well, you could save the £40 and you could just do the test yourself afterwards. You don't really need it marked. You're not planning to qualify for the BMO2 or anything like that. So so think of the £40 more as a fee for getting your paper marked rather than a fee for entering, right? Because you can just do the challenge on your own as well. Have you always loved maths? Yeah, I would say so. I was like 4 or 5 years old, and I think my mum did a bit of maths with me before I started primary school. And actually, there was this pilot program actually. They came around to primary schools, and they were interested in tracking. They were going to track people over the years who showed potential in maths, and I was chosen for this scheme at that age, and it probably had some mental impact on my confidence. And the idea was they would come back every few years and see how we progressed. Sadly, the program ran out of funding, and so they didn't actually come back. But it gave me a bit of confidence. But you can. I know many people, excellent mathematicians, who didn't enjoy maths that much until they got to secondary school or later even. So yes, it helps to have started. The earlier you start, the better, but never too late. How do you improve your SMC score? Got 80 last year and would love to qualify, but hold 20 marks off. Yeah, I mean, it's a really tough barrier. I mean, I don't really remember if I qualified myself for all the Olympiads when I was at school. I did a couple of times at least. Wasn't as much preparation material out there at the time actually, and these competitions, especially the Olympiads, are dominated by the top schools, I would say, especially the private schools. So it's a bit unfair. It's part of why I want to put all these courses out. So I will be putting last year's Senior Maths Challenge paper out into the free courses at some point in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, you just got to keep practicing and preparing. I mean, if you know someone who has been down that route before, or if you can afford a little bit of tuition and things like that, that's always an option. I'm not meaning to sell my courses here too much, but I will be running a short Senior Maths Challenge preparation course that starts in a couple of weeks. You can see the details on the Mathsaurus website. But I would say a lot of it is also in my free course and in the membership, where there's the Go for Gold course. I've got a lot of advice there. Maybe you've already seen that. So I've really, I guess my whole website is built around that. So if you want more advice on that, I might just send you over there for now, for that sort of stuff. Do employers at university take the results of UKMC into account? Well, universities, I guess I did mention earlier. I don't know if you were here at that point. I would say it's a good thing, but it's not essential. You need to show some interest in the subject you're applying for. UKMT is one way to do that, but it's by means not the only way. Employers probably not so much so, unless they're although I don't know, being an Olympiad winner clearly opens lots of doors, and I definitely know some mathematically minded hedge funds and places like that who would actively recruit Olympiad winners, and they would probably see the maths challenges in a good light as well, and they would like people that have done that sort of maths. Again, there's when you look around, there are some companies where they're not that sort of place, but there are some kind of really interesting maths driven companies out there, and many of the people running those companies will also have gone through the maths challenges and know what they are and recognise the value of them. So I think there is a pocket of employers where it can be very useful. But again, you can prove these things in other ways if you haven't done them as well. Maths related book recommended for a GCSE student. My favourite ones of all, and I'm actually rereading one or two of them, are these ones, these Math Girls ones, Hiroshi Yuki. Maybe not this one. Actually, on the website, again, I've put on that books page, there are some that are aimed at school-age students. They're called like equations and graphs, and I think there's one on trigonometry, and they cover more like school-level maths. And so I'll just leave it here. But it's maths with a story, it's kind of, the story is not like the strongest element of the book, but there are these students and they're kind of solving the problems together. So there's you get to see the maths, but you also get to see like the discussions about the avenues they're going down, and you really kind of, the way it tells the story really gives you time to like sit with the problem and to explore it, and so I like this a lot. I could recommend tons of books, and maybe again that's another video. I should make my 10 favourite books. It's not a bad idea. Right, I've lost my place in the chat. I'm just going to go back. I did my GCSE, spent most of my time watching maths on YouTube. Yeah, now, okay, controversial statement. I'm a maths YouTuber. Perhaps, can I call myself a YouTuber? I suppose so, yeah. I feel more like a teacher still. But I wouldn't recommend spending all your time watching maths on YouTube. Yes, it's good. You've done a good thing, right? But you should spend most of your time trying to solve problems. So yes, watch the videos when you get stuck. Watch them for inspiration. Like when I put out challenge videos, I'm really hoping that people pause the video, have a go at the problem, and then watch my solution. That they don't just sit and watch me do it, right? So yes, watch all this stuff, but also remember, most of us learn maths from the books, not from YouTube, right? And something about sitting with a book calmly, quietly, no distractions, is also a really nice way of doing maths. So obviously watch all of my videos, but don't spend too long on YouTube, on TikTok and things like that. Okay, there's some good stuff out there though. Actually, I think TikTok's not a bad place for maths these days. I'm on there and I've seen a lot of I've learned some things from TikTok, or found some interesting things from TikTok for sure. Any books you suggest for Tamua? That's a good question. I would say I'm not really aware of that much specifically for Tamua. But I would look at the Cambridge STEP support website. Things like I mentioned earlier, the Stephen Silkos Advanced Problem Solving book. I remember that has a lot of good stuff that's sort of like preparing you for STEP, but I suppose it's also for things like Tamua and MAT. But the idea of Tamua and MAT is it's not meant to be an exam that has like a syllabus apart from A-level. So the idea is you would just get really good at A-level, and then you would do some extra problem solving and then practice lots of those problems. And it's not like there's a extra kind of course required for it. Although I am thinking about making a course focused on it, but it is it's a bit complicated, I would say, and it's not got a huge audience. But I do think I think the people that are interested in it are very interested in it. So it's not my immediate plan. I probably won't have it. Definitely won't have one ready for this year, but maybe for a year's time we might have a bit more content around that, and I'm actively thinking about that. Thank you so much for making the Olympic content more accessible. Yeah, not a private school. Found the advantage. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't go to private school myself. I went to a grammar school, selective entrance. But my parents didn't do A levels or go to university. I was the first in my family to do that, and it's definitely something that's important to me. I worked at the leading private schools at Westminster School and at Dulwich College, and I worked with lots of students, and I, can see, it's a great privilege actually, to have the resources to be able to invest in this. And if you're in that position, that's great. Take advantage of that. It's a wonderful opportunity you have. But the nice thing about maths is that you can just succeed with pen and paper as well, right? And I learned maths. I didn't. You see all these books behind me now. I would say, in my house growing up, there were very few books, and what books there were mostly sort of trashy fiction. And not things that would enrich your mathematical journey. And it was very hard actually to find extra things to read about maths. It was, I'm a bit older than I look perhaps. The internet had started to exist, but it was not the useful resource of full of maths that it is today. And it is possible, so, I mostly probably learnt from books like these ones here, the standard A-level textbooks that you then had to return at the end of the year. So you go to university and you don't have them anymore and you've forgotten it all, and it's like, well, okay. So Yeah, books are a great investment though. I mean, honestly, you can spend hundreds of thousands on online courses and training and tutoring and things, and all the information are in these books, which are somewhat expensive sometimes, but very good value. You can spend £30 or £40 on a really good maths book, and it can sustain you for a long time. So, obviously do take on my courses as well, but got to say that. Okay, I try to make them somewhat affordable, but also, also just to be honest, my strategy is make a lot of stuff available for free, try and help a lot of people, and then maybe a few people also go on to buy the paid courses, because this is actually my job. I don't have another job. Right, okay. Besides maths, what was your favourite subject growing up? I really enjoyed languages. I actually, at one point, I kind of thought I might want to do languages at university instead of maths. Maths is a language in a way. Lots of similarities. I loved Spanish. I think actually, I ended up doing French at A-level instead of Spanish because of timetabling issues. I also enjoyed French. I've had some nice teachers and did well at it. But I wonder if I'd actually been able to timetable further maths with Spanish, whether I might have ended up doing like a maths with Spanish degree or something. I don't know. Can't speak Spanish now. Well, I can speak it a little bit, but not one of those things I wouldn't mind going back to sometime. Do you teach maths? Yes. I was a full-time maths teacher, taught for 7 years at London's top independent schools, and since then have continued to work as a private tutor for some very influential families and for a mixture of people, and I teach maths through my Mathsaurus website now. So 30,000 students almost have taken a free maths challenge course there, and I do run group classes there now. So all my teaching is now online, and also just finished a maths PhD. So also doing maths myself when I can. Do you think problem solving of SMC would be highly beneficial for TMUA in comparison to BMO1 problem solving? Yeah, I mean, it's all useful. It's all useful. I think SMC is going to be more beneficial for TMUA than BMO. My gut feeling about it, really. I mean, all these things are going to be useful, but yeah, I would plump for the harder SMC or the senior kangaroo as well. I mean, let's not forget that. That's a good paper that's kind of halfway in between. Hope you'll do a course on TMUA. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly looking for different bits of content that we can put in. I mean, as I say, my friend Ben is going to be running some classes on TMUA, some live classes starting in 2 weeks' time. It might be, he'll probably use real TMUA papers for those, but one of the issues I have when I make courses is that I like to, for various reasons, to like make my own content, and that just takes a lot longer. There are good reasons as well, because I don't know, I mean, a lot of people I used to put exam content out on YouTube, and I have permission to use the UKMT stuff on YouTube and the Mathematical Association stuff, but exam boards can be a bit funny about using real exam questions, and I kind of want my content to be unique and to really push you in the directions I think are useful. So I probably end up getting less content out than I might otherwise, but I hope what gets out there is better. So yeah, maybe we'll get to TMUA, but it's they're fun problems. They'd be fun problems to write if I could. Again, time is challenging. Actually, now that so many people use the website, I love it, but it also creates a bit of an admin burden that so I'm trying to spend more of my time doing maths. Our attendance on today, I wasn't expecting to be here. It's been great fun. We might do this a bit more soon, but are these good? I mean, maybe with a regular a live slot where you can just come and ask questions like this. I mean, I could even do some maths on them, I suppose, but I feel like when I do maths, it's like got to be aimed at like a very particular group of people, and it'll be useful to people that are 14 or something, and it won't be useful to people that are 17 or older or whatever. Whereas if we just chat, maybe, I don't know. Other questions? Radical King channel, welcome. I think I missed one. Sorry, I'll come back. But let's see. How long did it take you to do your PhD? Yeah, I mean, a PhD usually takes 3.5 years. Mine was a 4-year program, which had an integrated master's. So I did another master's in research before, and I ended up taking a bit longer. I ended up taking, I think, about 5 years in the end in total, because COVID happened. So there was a bit of an extension, and things kind of ground to a halt for a little bit in the middle. And I also started working on Mathsaurus And so I think by the end of my PhD, I wasn't really working on it full time. I was 50-50 making the courses and teaching and things like that as well. Would you advise someone who wants to get better at maths? And Fargo, hello. Yeah, I mean, all of my content is around the maths challenges, and I think they're just a great way for all sorts of reasons to get better at maths. They target like problem solving. They're fun to do. So like, but my biggest piece of advice, I think, above everything else, is get used to getting things wrong and like enjoy the mistakes, and if you enjoy learning from the mistakes, and you're not so much like trying to get to 10 out of 10, you're not trying to kind of immediately become amazing at maths. If you can appreciate the subject for what it is, you can, get out of that mindset of that anxiety of kind of always having to like get things right and to do things well, and just to kind of enjoy the process. I know school doesn't always help with that actually, because hopefully it does help with it, but school can sometimes sort of pressure you into like getting each thing right quite quickly and moving on to the next one. But the maths challenges are great for sort of pulling you away from that and just giving you some problem solving time. I am doing the Girls Mathematical Olympiad. Any tips for it? Never done Olympiad stuff before. Great, brilliant competition to do. Very, very hard to do actually, because obviously like it's nice we've got this competition that allows more girls to access the Olympiad, but actually obviously plenty of girls just like really, really good at maths, right? I mean, there's no, and so actually they make the Girls Olympiad a little bit more accessible because they want to encourage more people to do it. But of course, the best students are still as good as the boys are, and so often better even. And so like usually like full marks is required for a gold medal, I think, in that one. But it's a great fun problem to do. I think look at the intermediate Olympiads as well. So like just do some practice problems, see what comes up, try and work out, just take, the first ones you look at are going to take a long time. You're going to have to go through the solutions. You might not understand everything. Have a look at my courses on the intermediate and the senior maths challenges. There's, all the ideas are in there, and the Olympiads just take them a bit further. So I'm not going to talk too much about like all of that, because I'll end up just repeating over the things that are in all of those courses. But practice. I don't know how much longer we're going to stay here. I think there's still people here, so I'll stay for a bit longer if you've got more questions. How hard is it to be a professor at Cambridge or Oxford for maths, physics, computer science, engineering? Yeah, it's obviously like, I suppose very would be a good answer to that question. I mean, these guys are really fantastic. You have to do a degree, you have to do a PhD, which is not very well paid when you could have, you could go and work for a bank and get paid lots of money, and you decide to do a PhD earning not very much to do more maths, and then you get a postdoc position usually where you have to like have career uncertainty, where you have to do like a 1 year post at one university. You might have to go to another country. That can appeal to some people, but it can be quite hard to have like a family life and things like that, and you're still doing really hard maths all the time. You have to get papers out, you have to publish, you have to do genuinely new maths, and okay, that's not that actually is not as hard as it sounds. I think if you're very good at maths and you kind of apply yourself to it, there's lots of little pockets of maths that are still open to research. If anyone who does a PhD has done a bit of new maths, I've done a little bit of it. But you have to kind of keep doing that. You have to persevere, and you have to kind of, I think there's two ways it's hard. It's hard because it's like maths is really hard, and universities can be a bit disorganized, and it's also hard because, you're a really expert mathematician, and you might be tempted to like glance across at your friends who have become hedge fund managers or something, kind of making millions, whilst you continue to go through your maths problems. But if you love maths problems, then you're really on the right path, and actually you can also look at maybe some of the ways that those people who pursue money are unhappy as well, and satisfy yourself that you've made a good choice, because it's a very satisfying subject. And personally, I don't, I like it a lot when I'm just sitting solving maths problems and not thinking about other things. Other than being a maths tutor, what job would you choose to do? Yeah, actually, my first job was in a law firm. I did a law conversion course after my maths degree, and went to one of these big city law firms. So I guess I thought about that for a while. But I guess I could be a university lecturer. So I have lectured on university courses. The city jobs, I suppose they did appeal to me a little bit as well. I think some of like mathematical finance, which is kind of where my PhD sat, is quite interesting. I could see some sort of techie kind of data job. There's lots of, and especially these days, more so than when I graduated. it did exist. I mean, it existed strongly then as well. I mean, quant finance, like that you would call like mathematicians in banks, definitely existed. But these days, there's so many like data science, statistics roles and things like that. I think I would go for something like a bit unusual now. One thing I wish I'd realised is that like there are all these big companies, right, that like target you for jobs, like Deloitte or whatever, and they've got like millions of jobs, and they're still hard to get. But there's also like lots, and they do kind of standard things. They do some interesting things as well, but it's like corporate culture. And then there's also like tons of like startups and smaller companies and people, like places doing interesting things where you can, especially early on in your career, you can you can afford to try things out and go to different places and just look for places that are solving interesting problems and try to join that team and learn something from it. Like the early days of the sort of Google and Meta and things were a bit like that probably. But I don't know. Now I work for myself. I have to say, the flexibility and kind of being able to like direct the things that I make is a very nice aspect of running this channel on the website. So what do you think is hardest about Matt? Honestly, I probably this is going to sound like a bit of a this is a serious answer. I think some of the hardest thing about Matt is the pressure that students put on themselves to do well in it, and the fact that it's attached to this whole university admissions process. I think when I did the equivalent of Matt, I didn't come from a background where anyone had ever been to Oxford or Cambridge, or I had family that had been to university, but not many really. It wasn't expected, and I didn't really feel pressure. I just liked maths, and it felt like an interesting opportunity to have a go at something. I wasn't aware of the change that going to Oxford would have in my life, right? Or that going to university to do maths, not just Oxford, right? So I think that is actually a genuinely hard part of it, right? To remember that it doesn't really matter if you love maths and you want to do maths, you will get in to do it somewhere, whether it's Oxford, whether it's Warwick, whether it's somewhere else, right? The maths degrees are very similar in all these places. If you can just convince yourself that actually you enjoy the subject, you're doing it because you want to get better at it, then the contradiction of this is that then it makes you do better, right? Obviously there's some difficult math problems in there as well, but sometimes the maths is the easy part. A friend who became an actuary, she said that exams are extremely challenging. Yeah, and actually that's an interesting one. When I applied to university, my personal statement said I wanted to be an actuary, and I've got some friends who are actuaries. I think it's quite interesting. I think it's like the 80s and 90s, and actuaries used to go on to be like chief executives of companies a lot, and that doesn't happen so much these days. It tends to be a slightly different profile. They're interesting. An actuary, if you don't know, is someone who like manages a pension fund or an insurance. Usually, you either have pensions or insurance for actuaries. So it's kind of people that like manage like probability and risk like on this large scale, and but the challenging thing about actuarial exams is that there's maths and statistics, but it's also like applied to real life. So it's also like policy and law and rules and things. So you have to get these like two different skill sets. There's like a more professional skill set overlapping with the technical mathematical skill set. But if you do certain degrees, you can get exemptions from some of the actuarial exams. So if you take relevant modules, you can often like reduce the number of exams you have to do. But you still have to also, I think, work for 2 years at least. Plus, people are usually doing 3 years of working plus exams after the degree to qualify to be an actuary. But it's quite a nice job. It's a job that has some maths in it, but doesn't have the crazy hours of some other city jobs. It's a bit more, So good balance, I think. The people I know that are actuaries seem to be quite well balanced and happy people. One of the person I heard got a medal at IMA but rejected from Oxford Maths with low maths score. So didn't practice for math. I think it's due to question type. Yeah, I mean they're not the same, right? I mean, you can be very good at maths challenge maths and not good at A-level maths. It's possible, right? I think they're useful for each other, right? Like doing the maths challenges really helps for A-level maths. It really helps, but you're not automatically going to be able to do those problems if you haven't practiced them. And even when you look at things like step, like the maths of step versus the maths of the maths challenges in particular, I think is very, very different, and it's very interesting. So I wouldn't, clearly there's a lot of overlap in the people that do well in them, but I know many people who are excellent mathematicians who would say they're not that good at maths challenge maths, and Maths Challenge Maths uses quite a peculiar mix of sort of algebra and geometry and number theory, and it doesn't, like the UK Maths Challenges, there's no probability in it, right? I mean, there's no, you can do, if you do STEP, you could do 2 probability questions in every paper and 2 mechanics questions if you want to. Like you do it without doing pure maths. So much pure maths you can do well. Any disadvantages or advantages of applying for maths at university? Oh, I think this heart is in the way. Let me see if I can see what you're saying. A university in the UK as an A-level student outside of the UK. Do you mean compared to like applying to somewhere outside of the UK? No, I mean, some universities may have a quota of like home and international students that they take, but often, and again, I mean, sounds like your English is very good. From your writing, I would say that sometimes for international students there can be a language barrier, but actually in maths it's not so bad, right? Because maths is sort of its own language. But no, I mean, universities in the UK are, I would say, very welcoming of international students. Obviously, there are fees associated with applying here as a university student, so in some ways, actually, international students are quite coveted because universities do have funding issues, I think, at the moment in the UK, as probably as everywhere else. So quite keen to recruit students, but you still have to pass the bar of being an exceptional student, especially if you want to go for like the really top universities like Oxford and Cambridge and not just taking the best students. But yeah, it's not something I have a huge amount of experience on, to be honest. I don't want to say too much about that. For tomorrow, if somebody completed all of the past papers, what should one do to improve chances of high score? Well, okay, so there's something implied in your question, which is that you've done this, and I'm assuming that on the last time you did one of these papers, you didn't get all of the questions right? And so there is now a process of reflecting and looking back at what you've done and trying to identify where your weaknesses are, right? Is it a particular type of question? Is it just that you don't know what technique to apply to what sort of question, right? Is it that you ran out of time, right? And all of these different problems would have different solutions. But there is no use. I mean, it is good to just keep practicing papers, and you can do the same ones again, or you can try to find, you can do map papers as well and things like that. They're quite similar. They go back a long way, so you can find a lot of those. But if you just keep doing the same thing and you're making the same mistakes, if you don't, so when I say do lots of papers, do lots of practice papers, right? There's an important step in the middle of reflection on what you've done to say, okay, so don't just like repeat and get the same things wrong. You have to diagnose, and you have to maybe go and ask someone for help, whether that's a teacher, a tutor, a friend, or you have to go and study something. You can ask me more questions about those individual things if you want to. Once you've got to the point of doing all the past papers, in a way, you've probably done enough past papers, right? I mean, you don't. Very often, if you can do like 4 or 5 past papers and you can be quite well prepared, right? You don't have to do all of them. It might be also actually that you've just got to a point where you are doing well and you're just anxious about doing well, and so there can come a point where you're better off relaxing a little bit, doing something else, and maybe you have got to getting like 9.0 or whatever it is you can get into MUA is not really the target. I mean, some people do get that, but you don't need to get full marks to do well. Do you have any tips for IB Maths internal assessments? Sorry, Adam, I don't know what they are really. I haven't taught IB, so my apologies. My last question, and I'm actually I think I might, well, if there are still questions, I'll stay for 5 minutes, and then I think we'll call it at in 5 minutes if people are still here. But my last question for tomorrow, step 1 on map papers. Step 1 on math papers, which are more helpful. A math, definitely. The multiple choice part of maths is very similar to the MUA, right? So step 1's good as well, but and in fact, these classes that we're advertising for a couple of weeks' time that I said my friend Ben is doing, they are we've advertised them for now as MUA and math because there's so much similarity between the short answer questions. Probably once MUA has happened, we will move them to being also math classes, right? Because to being just math classes, and then you can look at the long answer questions as well. But a lot of overlap. Um, Not really maths related, but what are your hobbies? Am I becoming a celebrity? That would be nice. People interested in my life beyond math. Um, what do I do? I mean, the thing I've been doing the most the last couple of years is playing tennis. Actually, I was never really much of a sporty person. In fact, I hated sport when I was a child, and I think when there was COVID happened, and then lockdown happened, and then we were allowed to do that again. I started playing tennis. That might be why I make some tennis analogies now when I give these things. And I've actually got pretty good over the last few years. And I think I might have become a sporty person, which is a weird thing to say. I go to the gym quite a bit now, and I think, again, I wish I'd realised that early on. I think it's one of the things I learned from teaching at these top private schools, that like they really, they focus on this like rounded individual, and I benefit a lot from being there just by recognizing the things that maybe I should have focused more on my education. Yes, I really honed in on maths, maybe at the expense of my personal development or sport and health and exercise and things like that, which are also very, very important. Yeah, maths coursework. Okay, short paper. Yeah, okay, I know the sort of thing you mean, like extended project kind of things. Yeah, pick something you're interested in and do some research on it. Make sure the topic that you're doing is something you're interested in, and then it'll make the whole process a lot easier. Kevin, I struggle with maths at school, and my 8-year-old daughter is the same. How to help her enjoy the subject? Yeah, I mean, as a parent, it can be difficult, especially if it's not something you enjoyed. And I would say, maybe, I don't think, Peter, there is any reason that you can't be good at maths. And there was probably something when you grew up that stopped you from becoming good at maths, that blocked you. Maybe it was bad teaching, maybe it was your own parents, maybe they weren't that, maybe they didn't like maths that much either. Perhaps they did, I don't know, I'm guessing. But I don't think, like, I've worked with adults who haven't done much maths, and they've become better at maths. In fact, I did a part-time degree when I was teaching, and there was someone on that hadn't done much maths, and she really enjoyed it, and she was a gym manager, and she wanted to get better at it, and she did really well in the end. This is a great opportunity for you, not only to help your child, but to repair your relationship with maths as well. And I sort of think if you don't repair your relationship with it, it becomes really hard to help your daughter as well, because ultimately, when you start saying things like "I struggle with maths," it kind of not excuses it, but it your children look up to you obviously as a hero, even whether it's obvious or not. And all the things that we say to children have an impact. And going to parents' evenings, it was always telling that you'd meet people and you think, oh, I want to talk to the parent about this problem. I remember one who was like, I wanted to talk to them about their organisational issues, and then the parents asked me to borrow a pen because they'd forgotten it. Right? It's like, oh, okay, hang on, there's a link here. So, age 8, she hasn't done very much maths yet. You can catch up with her. You can take a look at, I've got courses on my website for the first maths challenge, for the primary maths challenge. They're really great places to start, where you can work through those with her together, right? The first maths challenge is for ages 7 to 9, a perfect place to start. Really a mixture of easy and more challenging problems. And if you can do those with her, and if you can learn with her, often the best teacher is someone who's at the same level or just a little bit ahead, right? And if you can also show her that it's fine to not be good at something, but that you are going to recognise that and you're going to try and you're going to work through it with her, you'll get to know her well, you will enjoy spending time with her, you will develop together, and you will possibly really share something very, very good there. So find a good book, make a little team is my advice. Okay, I hope that makes some sense. Feel free to email me if you want to. I'm running some webinars for parents in the next week or two as well. If you're on my emailing list at some point, if you sign up, that you'll get some links to them. Any links for the Australian Informatics Competition course? Okay, so I don't have a course for the Australian Informatics Competition as such. I sometimes have used their problems in my classes and my teaching. They are excellent papers. You can find them online. If you go to the Australian Maths Challenge website, or if you search for it, you will find that there are some past papers available. The Australian challenges, they don't make as many available for free. Some of them you have to buy, but they do have at least a few years worth. If you really can't find them, feel free. I can probably send you one by email, although I don't like adding to my emails too much. So if you can find them yourself, that would be great. But I probably will reply if you email me. Right, good. I think I said I'd wrap up about now. and we've still got 9 people. I mean, I have to say, I'm very pleased that 9 of you have, more than 9 of you. I mean, many people have. 74 minutes. I've been here for an hour and a quarter, really. Okay, right. Many more than 9 of you have been here over this time. And as I said, I turned the live on today really just to test whether I could live stream or not. So great that you're all here. I've enjoyed chatting to you. I hope it's been useful and helpful. I am going to wrap up now, though. The only thing is, I haven't done this before, and so I don't actually know how to turn it off. But if you give me a second, there we go, I found the button. So I think if there are no more questions, or either way, I will say, hope you all have a good evening. Nice to chat to you. Perhaps we'll do some more streams at some point in the future. I'll try to advertise them somehow in advance rather than just turning up at random hours. Okay, all right.